39-year-old Darius abandoned his 9-month pregnant wife in the woods. Years later, she returned in a Lamborghini with her twin girls.
Darius, please, can you drive faster? Rachel Thomas held her stomach with both hands. Another contraction tightened across her body. Her breath came out in short bursts. She tried to sit up straight in the passenger seat, but the pain bent her forward. The road had changed. The smooth pavement from Henderson Highway had disappeared 10 minutes ago. Now there was only dirt, rough patches, tall grass, and trees on both sides of the road. Rachel looked out the window. No houses, no stores, no gas stations, just woods. "Where are we?" she asked. Darius kept both hands on the steering wheel. His face showed no concern. His eyes stayed on the road ahead. Rachel tightened her grip on the seat. Another wave of pain pushed through her body. She gasped, "Darius, the hospital is the other way." He didn't respond. The car kept moving deeper down County Road 417, past a faded wooden sign that read Pine Hollow Wildlife Area. Rachel swallowed hard. Her voice came out slower this time. "Darius, why are we going this way?" The car slowed. Then it stopped. The engine stayed running for a moment. Rachel waited. Her heart beat faster. "Darius!" The engine turned off. Silence settled inside the car. Outside, the trees moved gently. Darius opened his door and stepped out. Rachel blinked in confusion. "What are you doing?" He walked around the front of the car without answering. The passenger door opened suddenly. "Get out." Rachel stared at him. "What?" A strong contraction hit her. Her hand pressed against her stomach. "Darius, please, I can't stand right now." His hand grabbed her arm, firm, impatient. He pulled her from the seat. Rachel lost her balance and dropped to her knees on the dusty road. The dirt scraped against her palms. Pain rushed through her body. She cried out. The contraction slowly faded. Rachel lifted her head and looked at him. Her face showed fear, confusion, but Darius looked calm, almost relaxed, like a man who had finished a long task. Rachel tried to push herself up. "Please, help me back in the car." Darius reached inside his jacket and pulled out a stack of papers. He tossed them down in front of her. The pages scattered across the dirt. Rachel stared at them. Her eyes moved across the bold letters. Divorce agreement. Her hands began to shake. "Darius, what is this?" He leaned against the side of the car, his arms crossed. "I'm done with you," he said. Rachel blinked. "This marriage is over." For a moment, Rachel didn't move. Another contraction tightened across her stomach. Her body folded forward. She gasped for air. "Please, please take me to the hospital." Darius shook his head slowly. "You'll figure it out." Rachel looked up at him, her eyes filled with tears. "I'm having your baby." He gave a short laugh. "Enjoy your new home." He stepped back into the car. The door slammed. Rachel crawled forward on the dirt road. "Darius, please!" The engine started. The tires spun against the dirt. Dust flew into the air. Rachel reached toward the car as it pulled away. "Please don't leave me here." The car drove down the road, faster, then faster. Within seconds, it disappeared between the tall trees of Pine Hollow woodland. The sound of the engine faded. Then there was nothing, just wind moving through the branches. Rachel stayed on the ground. Her body shook as another contraction rolled through her. Her breathing became uneven. She looked down the empty road. No cars, no people, no phone, no help. The sunlight filtered through the trees and fell across the scattered divorce papers. Rachel pressed her hands into the dirt and tried to stand. Her legs trembled. She collapsed again. Tears ran down her face. But Rachel was not completely alone. Before we continue, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy powerful stories like this. and drop your city in the comments so I know where everyone is watching from. Because the man who just left his 9-month pregnant wife alone in the middle of Pine Hollow Woods didn't start out looking like a monster. He once looked like a blessing. At least, that's what Rachel believed.
Rachel first met Darius on a warm afternoon in downtown Cedar Hill, Texas. It was a small-town cafe on Main Street, the kind of place where people stayed longer than they planned. Rachel sat near the window with a notebook open in front of her. She had been trying to finish a list of groceries for her father's farmhouse. Her phone buzzed once with a reminder. Pick up fertilizer for Dad. She smiled to herself. Her father loved that small garden more than anything. Tomatoes, peppers, okra, simple things. Rachel closed the notebook and reached for her iced tea. "Excuse me, are you Rachel Thomas?" The voice came from beside her table. Rachel looked up. A tall man stood there, late 30s maybe, clean shirt, calm face, the kind of smile people use when they're trying not to look nervous. "Yes," she said slowly. The man smiled wider. "I thought that was you." Rachel frowned a little. "I'm sorry, do we know each other?" He pulled out the empty chair across from her. "Mind if I sit for a second?" Rachel hesitated, but something about him didn't feel threatening. "Sure." He sat down and leaned forward slightly. "My name's Darius." Rachel waited. He scratched the back of his neck like he was trying to find the right words. "I used to be one of your dad's students." Rachel blinked. "My dad's?" "Yeah, Robert Thomas, Cedar Hill High School." Now her face lit up a little. "Oh, wow, that was years ago, though." Darius nodded. "Long time ago." For a moment, he looked around the cafe like the place brought back memories. "Your dad used to teach history," he said. "Best teacher in that school." Rachel smiled proudly. "He still talks about those days sometimes." Darius laughed quietly. "Man saved my life, honestly." Rachel tilted her head. "What do you mean?" He leaned back in the chair. "I wasn't exactly a good kid back then." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "You?" He laughed again. "Yeah, hard to believe, right?" Rachel studied him now. He didn't look like trouble. He looked calm, disciplined, put together. "My dad helped you?" she asked. Darius nodded slowly. "More than he knows." He tapped the table lightly. "He stayed after school with me a lot, tutoring, talking, keeping me out of stupid stuff." Rachel softened. That sounded exactly like Robert. Helping people, giving extra time. "That sounds like him," she said. Darius smiled. "Yeah, that's him." There was a small pause. Rachel took a sip of her drink. "So, how did you recognize me?" she asked. Darius shrugged. "You look just like him." Rachel laughed. "I get that a lot." Another short silence passed. Outside, a pickup truck rolled slowly down Main Street. Then Darius spoke again. "I was actually hoping I'd run into him one day." Rachel leaned forward. "Well, you should come by the house sometime. He'd love that." Darius looked surprised. "You serious?" "Of course." Rachel smiled warmly. "My dad loves seeing his old students doing well." Darius looked down for a moment, then back at her. "Well, if you're sure." "I'm sure," Rachel said. She grabbed a napkin and wrote an address. Thomas Farm, County Road 12. She slid it across the table. "Come by this weekend," she said. "Dad will probably make you stay for dinner." Darius picked up the napkin slowly. Something flickered in his eyes for just a second, but Rachel didn't notice. She only saw the polite smile. "Thank you," he said. "Really." Rachel had no idea that afternoon would change her life forever. The next afternoon, a black sedan turned onto the gravel road leading to Robert Thomas's farmhouse outside Henderson, Texas. Dust rose behind the tires as the car rolled past the wooden fence. Darius stepped out and looked around. Wide land, tomato plants growing beside the fence, a small red barn near the back field. It was quiet, peaceful. The screen door opened before he even reached the porch. "Can I help you?" Robert Thomas stood there with one hand on the doorframe, tall, older now, but still strong. Darius smiled.
Mr. Robert, you probably don't remember me. Robert studied his face. Darius rubbed the back of his neck. Darius Thomas, class of 2008. Robert's eyes widened. Then he laughed. Well, I'll be damned. He stepped forward and shook his hand. Boy, you used to sit in the back row and argue with me about every history lesson. Darius chuckled. Guessed I learned something after all. Rachel walked out behind her father. You made it. Robert looked between them. So this is the young man you met yesterday? Rachel nodded. He was one of your students. Robert grinned and slapped Darius on the shoulder. Well, come on in. Anybody who survived my history class deserves a cold drink. Inside the farmhouse, the three of them talked for hours. Old stories, high school memories. Robert laughed more that afternoon than Rachel had seen in a long time. At one point, he leaned back in his chair and looked at Darius. You turned out all right, he said. Darius nodded respectfully. I had a good teacher. That was the first visit, but it wasn't the last. Darius started coming around often, sometimes to help Robert fix the fence, sometimes to bring groceries, sometimes just to sit on the porch and talk. The small town began noticing. Rachel finally found herself a good man, one neighbor said. Robert believed that too. One evening, as the sun dropped behind the fields, Darius stood beside Robert near the garden. I want to be honest with you, he said. Robert looked at him carefully. I care about Rachel. The older man stayed quiet. I'm not here playing games, Darius continued. I want a future with her. Robert studied his face for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Well, son, if you break her heart, I'll come back from the grave and deal with you myself. Darius laughed. Rachel did too. 3 months later, they were married in a small church outside Henderson. Robert stood beside his daughter at the altar with tears in his eyes. My baby girl finally found someone, he told the pastor proudly. For a while, life felt perfect, but happiness didn't last long. 4 months after the wedding, Rachel drove back to the farmhouse one afternoon. She rested a hand on her stomach as she stepped out of the car. 4 months pregnant. She couldn't wait to tell her father he's going to be a granddad soon. The gravel road was quiet. Too quiet. Rachel walked onto the porch. Dad? No answer. She pushed open the front door. Dad, you home? The house was still. A coffee mug sat near the sink. Rachel touched it. Still warm. Her heart began to race. She moved down the hallway. Dad? His bedroom door was halfway open. Rachel pushed it slowly. Robert Thomas lay on the bed, flat on his back, still. Dad? She stepped closer, touched his shoulder. Cold. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. No, no. She grabbed his arm. Dad, wake up! But he didn't move. Her knees collapsed beside the bed. Tears poured down her face. Outside, a neighbor eventually called the sheriff. The house filled with quiet voices. An ambulance arrived. Word spread fast through the small town. By sunset, Robert Thomas was gone. 2 days later, they buried him under the tall oak tree near the edge of his land. Rachel stood beside the grave holding Darius's hand. I don't know what I'd do without you, she whispered. Darius squeezed her fingers gently. I'm here, he said. But later that night, standing alone near the garden fence, Darius stared across the 30 acres of land, the barn, the trees, the long open fields. His face slowly changed. The kind smile disappeared, and for the first time, Darius Thomas looked satisfied, as if the one man who truly protected Rachel was finally out of the way.
Rachel held the edge of the kitchen table. What are you talking about? She asked. Her voice shook. Morning light filled the farmhouse kitchen outside Henderson, Texas. The garden her father planted sat beyond the fence like nothing had changed. But something had. Darius stood near the sink watching her, too calm. Rachel had seen him annoyed before, but this felt different, cold. I said, you need to start listening to me, Darius replied. Rachel pulled out the chair and stood up. I buried my father 2 days ago, And? The word hung in the air. Rachel stared at him. That's really what you're going to say right now? Darius folded his arms. You can't stay stuck in grief forever, he said. Life keeps moving. Rachel rested a hand on her stomach without thinking. 4 months pregnant. Everything felt heavier these days. The farm isn't going anywhere, she said quietly. Darius walked a few steps across the kitchen. His boots hit the floor slowly. You shouldn't worry about the farm anymore, he said. Rachel frowned. I wasn't worrying. I'm just saying I'll take care of things. Rachel looked at him carefully. My dad handled this place his whole life. Darius gave a small shrug. And now he's gone. The words landed hard. Rachel looked away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, wind moved through the trees near the barn. Rachel finally looked back at him. I'm not selling the land, she said. The sentence came out firm. Darius let out a short laugh. Who said anything about selling? Rachel didn't answer. Something about the way he said it didn't sit right. Darius walked to the window and looked across the property. 30 acres of open land, barn near the tree line, rows of crops her father cared for every morning. So much space, he said. Rachel followed his gaze. My dad loved this place. Darius nodded slowly. I can see why. He turned back toward her. But land like this shouldn't just sit here. Rachel crossed her arms. It doesn't just sit here. Darius lifted his hand slightly. Relax, I'm trying to help. Rachel studied his face. His tone sounded polite, but something underneath it felt sharp. You should take a break today, he said suddenly. Rachel blinked. A break? You're pregnant, he said. Stress isn't good for the baby. The concern sounded strange. Too quick. I'm fine, Rachel said. Darius grabbed his truck keys from the counter. I think you should come into town with me. Why? Lawyer stuff. Rachel frowned. I thought the attorney near South Main Street in Henderson was handling the estate. He is. Then why do I need to go? Darius opened the front door. Because you have paperwork to sign. Rachel stepped closer. What paperwork? You'll see when we get there. Sunlight poured through the doorway. Darius stepped outside toward the truck. Rachel stayed inside. Something inside her chest tightened. Darius, she said. He turned. What? I want to read everything first. For a second, his face changed. Just for a second. Then the smile came back. Of course. He shut the door behind him. Rachel stood alone in the kitchen. The house suddenly felt quiet again. Too quiet. Her eyes drifted across the counter. That's when she saw it. A thick, brown folder. She didn't remember seeing it earlier. Rachel walked over slowly. Her fingers felt unsteady as she opened it. Inside were stacks of legal papers, page after page. Her name appeared everywhere. Rachel flipped through them quickly. Most of it looked like estate documents. Then she reached the last page. Her breathing stopped. At the top of the document were 3 words, Property Transfer Agreement. Rachel read the next line slowly. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Because the new owner of the farm wasn't Rachel Thomas. The name printed there was clear, Darius Thomas, and she had never signed a single page.
The front door slammed so hard the picture frames shook. Rachel stood in the kitchen, frozen. A woman's voice filled the farmhouse. So this is the place? Rachel slowly turned. A tall woman stepped into the room like she already owned it. Perfect hair, dark glasses, expensive purse. Agnes Thomas. Darius walked in behind her carrying 2 suitcases. Rachel blinked. What is this? Darius placed the bags near the stairs. My mother is staying with us. Rachel stared at him. For how long? Agnes removed her glasses and looked around the kitchen with slow judgment. Her eyes landed on the sink.
dirty dishes. Then the floor, dust near the back door. Her mouth tightened. "This house is smaller than I expected," Agnes said. Rachel felt heat rise in her chest. "This is my father's house." Agnes walked closer to the kitchen counter. She touched the wood surface like she was inspecting it. "Yes," she said, "I can tell." Rachel folded her arms. "Why didn't anyone tell me she was coming?" Darius shrugged. "It happened fast." Agnes looked directly at Rachel for the first time. Her eyes moved down to Rachel's stomach. 4 months pregnant. Agnes nodded slowly. "So the baby is real," she said. Rachel frowned. "What does that mean?" Agnes gave a thin smile. "Just making sure." Darius cleared his throat. "Mom had some issues at her apartment in Tyler, near South Broadway Avenue." Rachel waited. "And?" "She'll stay here for a while," he said. Rachel looked from him to Agnes. Neither of them looked like guests. Agnes already moved through the kitchen like she lived there. She opened a cabinet, then another. Rachel stepped forward. "Please stop going through things." Agnes paused, then turned slowly. "Things?" Her eyes narrowed. "You mean your father's things?" Rachel said nothing. Agnes leaned closer. "You're very sensitive," she said. Rachel's patience cracked. "You just walked into my house." Agnes laughed softly. "Your house?" Darius stepped between them. "That's enough." Rachel looked at him. "You didn't even ask me." Darius's face hardened. "My mother doesn't need permission." Rachel stared at him. The room felt smaller, more crowded. Agnes walked to the window facing the fields behind the farmhouse outside Henderson, Texas. She looked across the land, the barn, the garden, the long fence line leading toward Farm Road 2276. "So much wasted space," Agnes said. Rachel felt her chest tighten again. "This land feeds people." Agnes looked amused. "Farming?" She turned toward Darius. "You didn't tell me she was still playing farmer." Darius chuckled. Rachel felt the humiliation hit her like a wave. "I'm standing right here." Agnes ignored her. "This place could be worth something if it was developed," Agnes said. Rachel stepped closer. "It's not for sale." Agnes tilted her head. "Are you sure about that?" Rachel opened her mouth, but Darius spoke first. "We're still discussing options." Rachel turned sharply. "We are not discussing anything." Darius's eyes flashed with warning. Rachel noticed it, the same look he gave her in the kitchen days earlier. Control. Agnes smiled like she enjoyed the tension. "You two should work on communication," she said. Rachel looked at the suitcases near the stairs. "Are you really staying here?" Agnes nodded. "For the baby." Rachel frowned. "What does that mean?" Agnes walked closer, her voice calm. "You clearly need help." Rachel felt the insult land deep. "I'm doing fine." Agnes looked Rachel up and down again. Then she said the words that froze the air in the room. "A strong woman would have protected her father." Rachel's breath caught. Silence spread through the kitchen. Darius didn't defend her. He didn't react at all. Rachel stepped into the kitchen holding a small grocery bag. It barely weighed anything. Her fingers tightened around the handles like she was ashamed of it. Agnes sat at the dining table, flipping through a magazine she bought earlier in town on West Main Street in Henderson. Darius stretched out on the couch, watching TV. Rachel quietly set the bag on the counter. She started pulling things out. 2 apples, a loaf of bread, a small carton of eggs. That was it. Agnes looked up. Her eyebrows lifted. "That all?" Rachel didn't answer right away. She kept placing the food on the counter like maybe more would appear if she moved slow enough. "I told you to buy chicken," Agnes said. Rachel spoke softly. "There wasn't enough money." Agnes scoffed and looked at Darius. "You hear that?" Darius muted the TV. Rachel's stomach tightened. "I gave you $20, he said. Rachel nodded. "Gas was almost empty. I had to stop on Highway 79 near the Henderson Square." Darius stared at her like she had just said something stupid. "You always got some excuse." Rachel swallowed. "I'm trying." Agnes stood up and walked to the fridge.
She opened it. Inside was almost nothing. Leftover beans, half a bottle of milk. Agnes shut the door hard. This is embarrassing. Rachel felt heat crawl up her neck. I bought what I could. Agnes crossed her arms and looked Rachel up and down. 7 months pregnant, loose clothes, tired face. A pregnant woman eating like this? Agnes said. Rachel felt a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe Agnes was worried about the baby. But Agnes kept going. No wonder you look so worn out. The hope died fast. Rachel grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. I'm doing my best. Darius laughed from the couch. That's the problem. Rachel turned. What does that mean? Darius walked into the kitchen slowly. He looked her over like she was something he regretted buying. You move slow. He pointed at the groceries. You can't even handle a simple errand. Rachel shook her head. I'm carrying your child. Darius shrugged. And? Rachel waited. Just 1 second. Maybe he would soften. Maybe he would remember who she used to be to him. But his eyes stayed cold. I blame your father for this, Darius said. Rachel's chest tightened instantly. Don't talk about him. Darius smirked. Why not? Rachel's voice shook. He trusted you, Darius. My father worked his whole life for this land. Darius laughed. And look what he left behind. Rachel stared at him. What's that supposed to mean? A weak daughter who can't even run a house. Rachel felt anger rise through the exhaustion. I raised me with love. Darius stepped closer. Well, love didn't teach you much. Rachel turned toward the stove before the tears came. She cracked eggs into a pan. The sizzling filled the silence. Behind her, Darius kept talking. You're lazy. Rachel froze. You're always tired. Her grip tightened around the spatula. And honestly, he paused just long enough. You're not even pretty anymore. Rachel felt something break inside her. The kitchen went quiet, except for the eggs cooking. But Darius wasn't finished. I should have listened to my mom. Rachel didn't move. Agnes smiled slightly. Darius kept going. I should have married Sonia. Rachel's hand stopped. She knew that name. His ex. Sonia's smarter, he said. Rachel stared down at the stove. Sonia's beautiful. The tears finally started building in her eyes. And Sonia wouldn't be standing here looking like a burden. Rachel turned the stove off. She set the spatula down slowly. Then she walked past them. Darius frowned. Where you going? Rachel grabbed her coat. She didn't answer. Agnes called out. Dinner isn't finished. Rachel opened the front door. Cold air hit her face. The wide field stretched behind the farmhouse outside Henderson near Farm Road 2276. She stepped outside. Her stomach tightened as the baby moved. Rachel walked toward the old pickup truck, then past it, past the barn, her vision blurred with tears. She kept walking until she reached her father's grave under the tall oak tree near the edge of his land. Rachel slowly lowered herself onto the grass. Her swollen stomach pressed against her legs. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then the tears came hard. Daddy! Her voice broke. They hate me. The wind moved softly through the trees. Rachel wiped her face. I don't know how to fight them without you. She looked down at the ground near the grave. That's when she noticed it. Fresh footprints in the dirt. Large, deep. Not hers. Not old. Someone had been standing at her father's grave. Very recently.
Rachel opened the refrigerator. Cold air brushed her face. She stared inside. Nothing had changed. Half a bottle of milk, 2 eggs, a small plastic container with leftover rice. That was it. Her stomach twisted. The baby shifted again. 7 months pregnant and hungry. Rachel closed the fridge slowly. Behind her, Agnes sat at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone like none of it mattered. Sunlight spilled across the old wooden floor of the farmhouse outside Henderson near Farm Road 2276. Agnes didn't even look up. Well? Rachel turned around. There's barely any food left. Agnes sighed, like she was tired of hearing it. You say that every week. Rachel stayed calm, even though her hands were shaking. I need to eat. Agnes finally looked up. You do eat. Rachel frowned. Not enough. Agnes leaned back in her chair. You finished the chicken yesterday. Rachel blinked. That was lunch. And dinner, Agnes said. That was all I had. Agnes gave a small laugh. Pregnancy isn't an excuse to eat like a pig. Rachel froze. The insult landed harder than she expected. Her hand moved slowly to her stomach. I'm feeding your grandchild. Agnes shrugged. Then teach it not to be greedy. Rachel just stared at her. For a moment, the kitchen went quiet. Then the front door opened. Darius walked in carrying a fast food bag. The smell filled the room instantly. Hot fries, greasy burgers. Rachel's stomach tightened so hard it almost hurt. Darius dropped the bag on the table in front of Agnes. She smiled. About time. Rachel stepped closer. Her eyes stayed on the bag. Did you bring anything else? Darius looked confused. For who? Rachel swallowed hard. For me. Darius opened the bag and handed Agnes a burger. No. Rachel blinked. You didn't get me food? Darius grabbed a handful of fries. Nope. Rachel's voice came out quieter now. I haven't eaten since yesterday. Darius popped a fry into his mouth. Not my fault. Rachel felt heat rush into her face. Darius, I'm pregnant. He rolled his eyes. You say that like it's supposed to impress me. Agnes unwrapped her burger slowly. You're very dramatic, she said.
Rachel watched them start eating. The smell of fries filled the kitchen. Her stomach growled so loud she felt embarrassed. She gripped the counter to steady herself. Can I at least have a few fries? Darius pulled the container closer to himself. No. Rachel stared at him. Why? He shrugged. Because I paid for them. Rachel felt humiliation burn in her chest. I'm your wife. Darius leaned back against the table. And? Rachel's throat tightened. I live here too. Agnes laughed softly. That's generous of us, isn't it? Rachel looked at her. What does that mean? Agnes took a slow bite of her burger. It means you don't contribute much. Rachel's head snapped toward her. I cleaned this entire house. Agnes wiped her mouth with a napkin. And you still managed to do a poor job. Rachel closed her eyes for a second. Her head felt light. The baby moved again. A dull ache spread through her stomach. Darius noticed. Don't start that weak act. Rachel opened her eyes. I'm not acting. Then eat something, he said. Rachel pointed to the fridge. There's nothing. Darius shrugged. There's rice. That's barely food. Then go find some. Rachel laughed once. A tired, broken sound. I don't give you money. Darius smirked. Sounds like a you problem. Rachel felt her legs weaken. She grabbed the back of a chair. Agnes watched her like she was watching a show. You look terrible, she said. Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. I feel sick. Then sit down then. Rachel didn't move. Instead, she grabbed her coat from the chair. Darius frowned. Where are you going? Rachel walked toward the door. Outside. Agnes laughed. With what money? Rachel stopped at the doorway. I'll figure something out. Darius crossed his arms. You won't last an hour. Rachel opened the door. The wind rushed across the gravel driveway and the long dirt road leading toward downtown Henderson near North Marshall Street. She stepped outside. Her stomach growled again. Her body felt weak, but she kept walking. Behind her, Darius called out one more thing. Remember this. Rachel stopped but didn't turn around. If you leave, he said calmly, don't come back begging. Rachel looked over her shoulder. His face held the same cold confidence. like he already knew she had nowhere else to go. Rachel said nothing. She walked down the driveway. The gravel crunched under her shoes. Her stomach ached. Her head spun slightly. When she reached the edge of the road, she stopped. Cars moved in the distance toward East Main Street. Rachel took a slow breath. That's when she noticed it. Across the road, parked beneath a tall oak tree, a black sedan. She had never seen it before. The driver's window was slightly down, and someone inside the car was watching the farmhouse, watching everything. Rachel stood near the oak tree again. Her eyes stayed locked on the dirt beside her father's grave. Those footprints, fresh, not hers. Rachel slowly pushed herself to her feet. Her back ached. 8 months pregnant made everything harder now. Her stomach still felt empty, but hunger wasn't what she felt most. It was something else, a quiet kind of fear. She scanned the area. Tall oak trees leaned over the hill, their shadows crawling across the ground. The place looked empty, too empty. Rachel's eyes drifted back to the dirt. The prints were large, deep in the soil. Whoever stood there had been standing still for a while, watching. Rachel knelt again beside the stone. Her fingers brushed across the carved letters. Robert Thomas, beloved father. Her throat tightened. Dad! The word barely left her mouth. No answer came, only the wind pushing through the trees. Rachel looked down again at the footprints. Someone had been here, and not long ago. Her mind jumped to the same thought again. The black sedan, the one parked across from the farmhouse near Farm Road 2276. The window slightly down. Someone sitting inside, watching the house. Her stomach tightened. The baby shifted. Rachel pressed a hand against her belly. "It's okay, baby," she murmured softly. "Mom's okay." But she wasn't sure that was true. "I don't know what to do, Dad." The wind stirred again. Dry leaves slid across the grass. Then something caught her eye. Right beside the headstone, Rachel frowned. A small white envelope sat partly tucked against the base of the stone. Her heart skipped. She was sure it hadn't been there earlier. She leaned closer. The envelope had no stamp, no address, just one word written across the front. Rachel. Her pulse began to pound. Rachel looked around quickly. No one. The maintenance truck sat far down the slope. Rachel slowly opened the envelope. Inside was one folded sheet of paper. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. 2 lines of writing. Simple. Neat. Rachel read them once. Then again. Your father tried to protect you. You are not safe in that house. Rachel's breath caught in her chest. She flipped the page over. Nothing else. No name, no explanation. Then she heard it. A car door closing. Rachel turned toward the entrance. The black sedan pulled away from the curb. Her heart jumped. The same car. She was certain now. The sedan rolled forward slowly, calm, not rushed, like the driver expected her to see it. Rachel looked down at the message again. Your father tried to protect you. The words felt heavier now, because suddenly a memory pushed into her mind. Something Agnes had said earlier in the kitchen, something bitter. Your father tried to stop things that weren't his business. Rachel slowly lifted her eyes toward the empty road, and for the first time, a terrifying thought crossed her mind. What if her father's death hadn't been natural at all? Rachel pushed open the farmhouse door. The screen door slapped the frame behind her. Inside, nothing had changed. Agnes sat at the kitchen table with her phone. Same chair, same cold expression. Sunlight poured through the wide window facing the garden outside Henderson near Farm Road 2276. Rachel stepped inside slowly. Her hands stayed tight around the folded note. Her heart was still racing. The footprints, the warning, the black sedan. None of it felt like an accident. Agnes finally looked up. "Well," she said, "you came back."
Rachel didn't answer. She moved farther into the kitchen. Darius leaned against the counter near the sink, scrolling on his phone. He glanced at her, then looked back down, like she wasn't worth the effort. Rachel stopped near the table. I went to the oak tree. Neither of them reacted. My father's grave. Agnes shrugged. And? Rachel watched their faces carefully. There were footprints. Darius sighed like he was already bored. Someone was there. Rachel stepped closer. Someone was standing at my father's grave. Darius put his phone down. You're starting this again. Rachel ignored him. She placed the folded paper on the table. Someone left this. Agnes glanced at the envelope but didn't reach for it. What is it? Rachel studied her. A message. Darius laughed once. Let me guess. Another one of your feelings. Rachel didn't respond. Agnes finally picked up the paper. She unfolded it slowly. Her eyes moved across the two short lines. For just a moment, something changed in her face. It disappeared almost immediately, but Rachel caught it. Agnes folded the note again and slid it back. Someone's messing with you. Rachel didn't move. That's it? Agnes leaned back. People love drama after a funeral. Rachel watched her closely. You weren't surprised. Agnes smiled thinly. Should I be? Rachel turned to Darius. There was also a car. He looked annoyed. What car? A black sedan. Rachel pointed toward the road outside the house, parked across from the house earlier. Darius laughed. So now someone's spying on you. He shrugged. Girl, go take some rest. You're tired. Rachel stepped closer. No, something is wrong. Darius walked toward her, slow, calm. You're letting your imagination run wild. Rachel held his stare. Did my father know something?
The room went quiet. Darius's jaw tightened slightly. What are you talking about? Rachel didn't blink. Agnes said he tried to stop something. Agnes scoffed. You take everything too seriously. Rachel pointed at the note. That message says he tried to protect me. Darius stepped closer until he was right in front of her. You need to listen to me. Rachel crossed her arms. I'm listening. His voice dropped. This house, this property, belongs to me now. Rachel felt the words hit her chest. No, she said. This was my father's. Darius smiled slightly. And your father is gone. Rachel's stomach twisted. You can't just take everything. Darius leaned closer. Watch me. Rachel stepped back. Her eyes moved to Agnes. You knew about that note before I said anything. Agnes stood up. Her chair scraped across the wooden floor. You think the world revolves around you. Rachel didn't answer. She watched Agnes grab her purse. The older woman walked toward the door. Then she paused, just long enough to glance at Darius. A quick look, quiet, but full of meaning. Rachel felt a chill crawl through her chest. Agnes opened the door. Sunlight flooded the room. Before stepping outside, she spoke calmly. Darius. He looked up. Agnes adjusted her purse strap. Make sure she stays inside today. Rachel's heartbeat quickened. Agnes walked out the door. Silence filled the kitchen. Rachel slowly looked back at Darius. And suddenly, the pieces in her mind started shifting. The note, the car, the warning. Someone out there was trying to protect her, and the people inside this house were clearly afraid of it.
Rachel sat on the edge of the bed and pressed both hands against her stomach. Another wave of pain rolled through her body. She sucked in a breath and waited for it to pass. 9 months. Her whole body felt heavy now. Her back ached constantly. Her legs stayed swollen. Even walking across the room felt like work. And the baby kept pushing lower every day. Rachel wiped sweat from her forehead. The farmhouse felt quiet. Outside the window, The fields stretched across her father's land near Farm Road 2276, land that used to feel safe. Now it felt like a cage. She hadn't seen a doctor once, not one hospital visit, no checkups, no vitamins, nothing. Every time she asked, Darius had the same answer. We handle it later. But later never came. Another sharp pain shot through her stomach. Rachel grabbed the edge of the mattress. Okay, she muttered to herself. The baby shifted again. Something felt different this time. Stronger. Lower. Rachel slowly stood up and moved toward the door. Her legs trembled as she walked down the hallway. The house smelled like coffee and fried food. When she reached the kitchen, Darius sat at the table scrolling through his phone. Agnes stood at the stove. Neither of them looked concerned. Rachel held her stomach. I think something's wrong. Darius glanced up. What now? Rachel swallowed. The baby. I'm having pains. Agnes sighed loudly. You've been complaining for months. Rachel shook her head. No, this is different. Another contraction hit. Rachel bent forward slightly, breathing through it. Agnes finally turned around. Her eyes narrowed. Are you sure you're not just being dramatic again? Rachel grabbed the counter to steady herself. My stomach keeps tightening. Darius leaned back in his chair. How often? Rachel hesitated. I don't know. Maybe every few minutes? Agnes and Darius exchanged a quick look. Something about it felt strange. Too quiet. Too calm. Rachel noticed it. Her chest tightened. We should go to the hospital, she said. Darius stood slowly. He grabbed his truck keys from the counter. Fine, don't make a scene when we get there, he said. Rachel nodded quickly. Relief rushed through her chest. Finally. Darius walked toward the front door. Come on. Rachel moved as fast as she could. Each step felt heavier now. The contractions kept coming. Stronger. Closer together. Outside, the evening sky stretched across the fields. Darius opened the passenger door of the truck. Rachel climbed in slowly. Her breathing had changed now. Short. Uneven. Darius started the engine and pulled onto the dirt road. The farmhouse faded behind them. Rachel leaned her head back against the seat. Thank you, she said softly. Darius didn't answer. The truck drove past the familiar road leading toward Henderson. But after a few minutes, Rachel frowned. This isn't the way to town. Darius kept driving. His eyes stayed on the road. Rachel turned toward him. Darius! No answer. The truck turned onto a narrow dirt path that led deeper into the woods. Rachel's stomach dropped. Where are we going? Darius slowed the truck. The trees thickened around them. The road ended in a quiet clearing. Rachel's heart started racing. Another contraction hit hard. She cried out, Darius! I need a hospital! He turned off the engine. The sudden silence felt wrong. Rachel stared at him. What are you doing? Darius stepped out of the truck. Then he walked around and opened her door. Rachel grabbed the seat. I can't walk right now. Get out, he said flatly. Fear crawled up her spine. Why? Darius grabbed her arm and pulled her from the truck. Rachel nearly collapsed when her feet hit the ground. Pain shot through her stomach again. Please, she gasped. The baby! Darius let go of her. Rachel dropped to her knees in the dirt. Leaves and dry branches covered the ground around them. The woods stretched silent and dark. Rachel looked up at him. Tears filled her eyes. Don't do this. Darius didn't respond. He got back in the truck. Her heart pounded. Darius! The engine started. Her breathing grew faster. Another contraction ripped through her body. Please! Darius looked at her one last time through the window. Here, he said, tossing the divorce papers to her feet. Enjoy your stay. Then he drove away. The sound of the truck faded down the dirt road. Rachel knelt alone in the woods, her body shaking, her baby coming, and night
slowly falling around her.
Behind a row of thick trees near the edge of the woods, someone had been watching the entire scene. A woman stepped forward slowly, gray hair tied back, worn boots, a small canvas bag of herbs hung from her shoulder. Naomi Williams. She often walked this part of Pine Hollow Wildlife Area during the day to collect wild plants and enjoy the quiet woods. But today, she had seen something she could not ignore. Her eyes stayed on Rachel lying in the dirt road, the abandoned car tracks, the divorce papers, and the way Rachel's body tightened again as another contraction started. Naomi's face turned serious, because one thing was very clear: that baby was coming soon. Naomi gripped the steering wheel of the old Jeep Wrangler as it bounced along County Road 417 outside Henderson, East Texas. Dust shot up behind the tires. Rachel lay across the back seat, her hands clutched the worn leather. Another contraction hit. Her body bent forward as pain surged through her stomach. I can't do this," Rachel cried. Naomi glanced at her through the mirror. "Yes, you can," Naomi said firmly. Rachel gasped for air. Her face was pale. Sweat covered her forehead. "The baby is coming," she said. Naomi pressed harder on the gas. Tall pine trees rushed past on both sides of the narrow dirt road. The closest hospital sat miles away near downtown Henderson, off South Main Street. Too far. Way too far. Naomi knew it. Rachel knew it. Another contraction hit harder than the last. Rachel screamed. Naomi's jaw tightened. "Hold on," she said. Rachel grabbed the back of the seat. Her fingers trembled. "I can't!" Naomi turned sharply onto a small gravel road that cut through the woods. Rachel's voice cracked. "Where are we going?" "My house," Naomi said quickly. "It's closer." The Jeep rattled across the uneven path. Rachel closed her eyes as another wave of pain took over. Her breathing became uneven. "I'm scared," she said. Naomi softened her voice. "I'm right here." Rachel gripped her stomach. The baby moved again, strong, ready. Minutes later, the Jeep rolled into a small clearing. A modest wooden house stood near the edge of the trees. A faded mailbox sat beside the gravel driveway. The numbers read 114 County Road 421. Naomi stopped the Jeep fast. "Stay with me," she said. Rachel cried out again. Naomi jumped out and rushed to the back door. She opened it carefully. Rachel could barely move. Her legs shook. Naomi slid one arm behind her shoulders. "We have to get inside." Rachel nodded weakly. Step by step, Naomi helped her toward the house. Inside the house, everything shifted into urgency. Naomi guided Rachel onto a couch in the living room. The place smelled like herbs and clean linen. Rachel's breathing grew faster. "Lord, please, help me," she cried. Naomi moved quickly. She grabbed towels from a nearby cabinet, filled a bowl with warm water. Years of nursing experience took over. She returned to the couch. Rachel grabbed Naomi's arm. "Don't leave me." "I'm not going anywhere." Another contraction struck. Rachel cried out. Naomi checked her carefully. Her expression changed. Then she looked at Rachel. "You were right," Naomi said. Rachel blinked through tears. "About what?" Naomi met her eyes. "You're having the baby now." Rachel's body trembled. "I'm not ready." Naomi placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "No one ever is." Rachel cried out again as the pain surged stronger. Minutes passed like hours. The first baby arrived. A tiny cry filled the room. Rachel collapsed back against the cushions. Tears rolled down her face. Naomi wrapped the newborn carefully. Then she looked back at Rachel. "Don't relax yet." Rachel stared at her. "What?" Naomi gave a small smile. "Your second baby is coming." Rachel closed her eyes. Another contraction surged. She screamed again. Outside the house, the quiet woods remained still. No neighbors, no traffic, just trees stretching across miles of land outside Henderson. Inside the small house,
Two newborn cries soon filled the air. Twin girls, both alive, both healthy. Rachel stared at them in disbelief. Her tears kept falling. Naomi placed the babies beside her. "You did it," Naomi said gently. Rachel looked down at the two tiny faces. Her daughters, alive, safe. For the first time in months, Rachel felt something she had almost forgotten: relief. But Naomi's eyes shifted toward the window. Something outside caught her attention. A dark vehicle moved slowly along the distant dirt road near the trees, the same road that led back to County Road 417. Naomi narrowed her eyes. The vehicle slowed, just for a moment, then it continued down the road. Rachel noticed Naomi's expression. "What is it?" she asked weakly. Naomi looked back at her. Her voice stayed calm, but her face had changed. "That man who left you out there." Rachel's heart skipped. Naomi continued, "I don't think he planned for you to survive."
The babies finally fell asleep. Rachel sat back in the old rocking chair near the window, both girls wrapped in soft blankets across her chest. 6 months. 6 months since that night in the woods. 6 months since she thought she was going to die. The house was quiet, except for the ticking clock on Naomi's kitchen wall. Outside, the gravel road stretched past the mailbox toward Cedar Hollow Road. No neighbors, no traffic, just woods and farmland. Naomi liked it that way. Rachel looked down at the babies. 2 tiny faces, 2 lives she almost never got to see. Her throat tightened. "You're safe here," Naomi said from the kitchen. She was stirring something in a pot. Soup. Rachel had gotten used to the smell. Warm food still felt strange. For months, she had lived on almost nothing. Naomi walked into the living room and placed a bowl on the table. "You need strength," she said. Rachel nodded. "Thank you." But her eyes stayed on the window. They always did. Naomi noticed. "You're still thinking about him." Rachel didn't answer right away. Finally, she said quietly, "He thinks I'm dead." Naomi sat across from her. "Good." Rachel looked confused. Naomi leaned back in her chair. "That kind of man only relaxes when he believes the problem is gone." Rachel swallowed. "Darius isn't stupid." "No," Naomi said, "but he's arrogant." Rachel rocked the babies gently. "What if he starts looking again?" Naomi shook her head. "He won't." "How can you be sure?" Naomi gave a small smile. "Because men like him celebrate too early." She stood and walked toward the window. The fields stretched wide under the afternoon sun. "Town rumors travel fast," Naomi said. Rachel looked up. "What rumors?" Naomi hesitated. "I heard something last week in Henderson." Rachel's chest tightened. "What?" Naomi turned toward her. "Darius told people you were kidnapped." Rachel blinked. "Kidnapped?" "Yes, by someone who hated your father." Rachel stared at her. "He's blaming my father's enemies?" Naomi nodded. "People believe it." Rachel's jaw tightened slowly. "And the farm?" Naomi didn't answer. Rachel already knew. "He took it," she said quietly. Naomi gave a small nod. Rachel looked down at the babies again. For months she had felt powerless, trapped, broken. Now something else stirred in her chest. Anger. Suddenly, a knock hit the front door. Rachel froze. The babies stirred. Naomi turned toward the hallway. Another knock. Slow. Firm. Rachel's heart started racing. "Don't answer it," she said. Naomi walked toward the door calmly. "This road barely sees anyone. That's exactly why I'm scared." Naomi stopped beside the door. "Who is it?" A man's voice answered from outside.
Rachel Thomas? Rachel's body went cold. Naomi opened the door halfway. A tall man in a dark suit stood on the porch. Gray hair, leather briefcase, calm eyes. "I'm looking for Rachel Thomas," he said. Naomi studied him carefully. "Why?" The man opened his briefcase slowly. He pulled out a folder. "My name is David Mercer," he said. "I was Robert Thomas's attorney." Rachel felt like the room tilted. Her father's lawyer. Naomi stepped aside. "Come in." Rachel stood slowly from the rocking chair. The babies shifted in her arms. The man stopped when he saw her. For a moment he said nothing. Then he exhaled slowly. "Good," he said. Rachel frowned. "What do you mean, good?" Mercer placed the folder on the table. "I was hoping you were still alive." Rachel's heart pounded. "You knew where I was?" He nodded. "Your father asked me to keep watch over you." Rachel blinked. "My father?" Mercer opened the folder. Inside were several documents, legal papers, property records, bank seals. He slid them across the table. Rachel stared down at them. "What is this?" Mercer looked directly at her. "Everything your father left behind." Rachel's hands trembled. "I thought the farm was everything." Mercer shook his head. "No." Rachel slowly turned the first page. Numbers filled the document. Land deeds, accounts, investments. Her breathing grew uneven. "This can't be right." Mercer folded his hands calmly. "Your father hid most of his wealth years ago." Rachel looked up. "Why?" Mercer answered quietly. "Because he didn't trust your husband." Silence filled the room. Rachel's chest rose slowly. "So Darius owns almost nothing," Mercer finished. Rachel stared at the papers again. For months she believed everything was gone. Her father's land, her home, her future. Now those same papers sat in front of her. Power, hope, proof. Rachel looked toward Naomi. Naomi gave a small smile. "Told you," she said. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Mercer closed the folder. "But you shouldn't move yet," he added. Rachel looked at him. "What do you mean?" "You're safer if Darius still believes you're dead." Rachel slowly nodded. For the first time in months, she understood. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And this time, Rachel wouldn't be running. 2 years passed. The farmland outside Henderson, Texas, looked different now. Survey flags marked the soil. Bulldozers waited near the old barn. Several expensive trucks lined the dirt road along Farm Road 2276. Darius stood near the fence, speaking to a group of investors. "This property is perfect for development," he said confidently. Behind him, the wide acres stretched across the horizon. "The county already approved the first phase," he continued. "Luxury homes, private lake access, commercial space near the highway." One investor nodded. "This could bring millions." Darius smiled. Exactly what he wanted to hear. For 2 years he had waited for this moment. Rachel was gone, dead, or at least that's what everyone believed. The farm was finally his. Agnes stood beside him, wearing a wide hat and sunglasses. "I told you patience wins," she said proudly. Darius nodded. Soon the papers would be signed. Soon the land would turn into money. Then, suddenly, one of the investors looked toward the road. Who are they? 2 black Escalades rolled slowly toward the gate. Behind them came a white Lamborghini Urus. The vehicles stopped in a line near the entrance. The investors exchanged confused looks. The doors opened. 3 lawyers stepped out first. Then Mercer. Darius frowned. He recognized him instantly. Robert Thomas's lawyer. "What is he doing here?" Agnes muttered. Mercer walked toward the group calmly. Behind him, the Lamborghini's door opened. Rachel stepped out. The world seemed to stop. She wore a simple white suit, her hair tied back. Behind her walked Naomi, and between them, two little girls wearing matching red dresses. Darius felt the blood drain from his face. "That's impossible," he said. Agnes grabbed his arm. "Rachel?" The investors stared in confusion. Rachel stopped a few feet away from them. The wind moved across the open field. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mercer opened a leather folder. "Mr. Darius," he said, "we are here regarding the legal ownership of this property." Darius forced a laugh. "You're too late." Mercer slid several documents across the hood of a truck. "These are certified records from the county office." The investors leaned closer to read. The top document showed a trust, Robert Thomas Agricultural Trust. Below it were signatures. Rachel Thomas, sole beneficiary. Darius's smile disappeared. "That's fake." Mercer shook his head. "It's been active for 10 years. Another document followed. Fraudulent transfer of property, illegal claim of ownership, unauthorized financial activity. Mercer spoke clearly. "You claimed land that was never legally yours." One investor stepped back. "You told us the property was yours." Darius's voice rose. "It is." Rachel finally spoke. "No," she said calmly. "It isn't." Silence fell across the field. Rachel looked at the house behind them, the same farmhouse where everything began. "My father trusted you," she said quietly. "You lived in his home." Her eyes moved back to Darius. "And you tried to take everything." Darius clenched his fists. "You disappeared." "No, you left me to die." The investors exchanged uneasy glances. Mercer continued speaking. "Because of the illegal claim and damages to the property trust, Mr. Darius is now responsible for $3 million in financial penalties." Darius stared at him. "$3 million? Plus legal fees." Agnes grabbed her chest suddenly. "This is ridiculous," she said. "No," Mercer replied calmly. "This is the law." The investors began stepping away from Darius. One of them shook his head. "You lied to us." Another muttered, "This deal is over." Within minutes, the trucks started leaving the property. Darius stood alone in the dirt road. The dream he'd built collapsed in front of him. Agnes sank into a chair near the porch. Her breathing became heavy. Rachel watched quietly. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. Justice didn't feel like victory. It just felt necessary.
Darius's mom, Agnes, died the next morning. The doctor said it was a heart attack. The stress had been too much. The funeral was small. Darius looked older, broken. The man who once believed he owned everything now had nothing left. A week later, he stood outside Rachel's new apartment in downtown Dallas. The building was tall and modern, nothing like the farmhouse. Rachel opened the door. The two girls ran behind her in the hallway. They called out happily, "Grandma Naomi!" Naomi stood in the kitchen, smiling. Rachel stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Darius looked tired. "I lost everything," he said. Rachel stayed quiet. "I made mistakes," he continued. "Please, forgive me." Rachel felt tears rise in her eyes. "You're the reason my father is gone," she said softly. "He trusted you." Darius looked down. "You betrayed him, and you tried to kill me." The silence between them felt heavy. Rachel wiped her tears. "I'm not pressing charges," she said. Darius looked up in surprise. "I'm not pressing charges." "Why?" he asked. Rachel glanced back at the door. "My daughters deserve peace." She handed him one final document, the damages Mercer mentioned. Darius read the number again. $3 million. "You'll pay it," Rachel said. "Every dollar." She stepped back toward the door. "Then you disappear." Darius's voice cracked.
Rachel! She stopped him. Let life teach you what you refuse to learn. Rachel opened the door. Before stepping inside, she said one last thing. Go away, she cried harder now. I don't want to ever see you again. The door closed. Inside the apartment, the girls laughed while Naomi helped them set the table. Rachel wiped her eyes and walked back to them. Her father's farm was safe again. Her daughters were safe. And for the first time in years, Rachel finally felt free. In the end, some battles aren't about revenge. They're about reclaiming your life after someone tried to take it from you. Rachel lost trust, years of peace, and almost everything she had. But she never lost her will to keep going. And sometimes, that's the real victory. Before you leave, tell me this. Where are you watching from? And what part of Rachel's journey stayed with you the most? I'll be reading the comments.